Warning: some contents may be disturbing. Viewer discretion is advised. To my murderous neighbor, let's not meet again. Story by u/JK47. I grew up in a condo complex with a lot of kids, so like the 5-year-olds and the 14-year-olds all knew each other and played like Foursquare and stuff together kind of deal. I think I was in 9th grade when this happened, so I hadn't been playing outside as much, but I still knew all the neighborhood kids. One kid that lives a couple of condos up from me, I will call Ray Ray to keep it anonymous, because I'm not sure how much he knows. At this time, he was in 2nd grade and I was outside one day and he was crying and upset and started to run in front of a car. I had to stop him and then go get my mom. He was hysterical, saying that his dad was going to kill him. I wish we would have taken him seriously, but we thought that he was just in trouble and upset about it. My mom got his mom and she said everything will be okay and took him home. That summer, Ray Ray went to stay with his family in Bulgaria because they were immigrants from there, and I don't know, maybe his mom had a gut feeling that she needed to get him out of that house. Thank God, because he was not being irrational about his dad. One night, I was at a sleepover and I get a call from my mom really early in the morning. Ray Ray's dad had hammered his wife to death 3 condos down from mine. And he didn't stop there. He drove to his wife's work and killed his sister-in-law the same way, and then to his sister-in-law's house to kill her brother. The police got wind of it but couldn't catch him in time. He spared himself the hammer and shot himself. I haven't seen Ray Ray since he left that summer, but I know that he switched schools, and I heard a rumor that they told him that his parents died in a car crash. But he is a junior, so if he ever Googles his name, he will know right away what his dad did. You never think something like this will happen to someone you know. I guess what I really learned is to listen when people are calling for help in whatever way it is. And kids know what they're talking about more than we give credit them for. So, I know you're dead, but even on the other side, let's never meet again.
Possible human traffickers scouting victims by Scatterbrains, narrated by 242 Reads. To start off, this is my first post here. I've lurked for a while now and decided, hey, this experience could be a perfect thing to post on this subreddit. It's kinda weird, it's kinda odd. Why not? This encounter happened to me, male 19, and my 2 friends a while back. We'll call them, Mitchell and Tatum. It was around 9:45 at night. It was really dark, and we were walking to Tatum's apartment, which was only about 8 blocks away. We walked on the dark side of the street since it was quicker. The other end of the street, which Mitchell lived on, having streetlights. As we turn the corner to walk, we see 3 cars parked in front of each other against the curb next to a house. I'm still unsure if there were people in those other cars. Mitchell had said that he could have sworn he heard someone yelling someone's name in one of the cars, which I maybe heard? I can't remember for sure. The car in the front had its lights on and a man, maybe in his mid-20s, was sitting in front of the car, talking on his phone. When he saw us, he started talking significantly louder than before, as if he wanted us to hear him. Red flags are going off in my head. I don't remember what he was saying, but Mitchell later stated that it sounded like he was talking in code. Something along the lines of, she had a great time, having a good time. I really don't remember. Anyways, we walked a bit further down the sidewalk, and I'm trying not to look back, which I end up doing a few times. We turn our heads to see another guy sitting in complete darkness in the alley ahead. The only reason we saw him is because he was lighting something. That's odd, I thought. I never seen this many people in close range of each other at night. Ever. As we walked further to the end of the street, the apartment complex being on the corner, there was a man and a woman huddled together, just standing there, talking. They were across the street from us. We eventually turned the corner and rushed into the complex, where we theorized what had happened. Before we even got into the apartment itself, we heard a popping sound, which wasn't too far away. Mitchell said it sounded like a gunshot from what could have been the same area we came from. Mitchell said that the middle car could have been blocking someone in to nab them, which could make sense, but I still don't know. When my mom picked me up, they were gone. The cars, everyone. And the other people we saw seemed way out of place because there's usually nobody out there besides us. I feel like it could have been a human trafficking scheme, which is scary to imagine. Does anyone have any theories on this? If so, feel free to share them below. I really want to hear your feedback.
I'm convinced my childhood best friend was a sociopath. Story by you/RhiannaJD. I was in a toxic, borderline abusive friendship with a girl from the ages of 9 to 12. Here's some background information to give you a little understanding as to what my life was like back in the late 2000s, early 2010s. I grew up in a very tumultuous household. My parents hated each other, and my extended family, along with my immediate, were plagued by mental illness and drug addiction. So, needless to say, I was a very anxious child who was drawn to unstable people, and suffices it to say that they were drawn to me. I was a shy 11-year-old girl who, like many others before me, used the internet as a way to vent my frustrations and anger about my home life. This was the time where AOL was the main source of communication used between friends, and I was no stranger to this, along with MySpace and Facebook. However, I wasn't like the typical preteens of this era, or so I thought. I kept my profiles private. I never accepted a follow or a friend request that I didn't know, and never shared my location on these said profiles. And this is the part where I introduce Tanya. Tanya isn't her name, of course, as I don't want to use her real name in case she just so happens to read this thread, watches the YouTube channel, or listens to the podcast. So we will just call her Tanya. Tanya and I met in elementary school, one of the points in my life where my family situation was quite volatile, and in retrospect, I think she sensed this. I was vulnerable, and Tanya took advantage of my innocence. She never really displayed any signs of her true intentions in the beginning, as they never usually do. She would do shady things every now and again. For example, manipulate me into begging my mom to stay on the computer until the wee hours of the morning so we could go on NSFW websites. She would ghost me when I didn't give her my favorite pen, or yell at me when I couldn't perfect a guitar solo on Guitar Hero. She did some other things to me that I believe my brain blocked out due to trauma, and my mom didn't like her either. Parents always have a weird intuition when it comes to friends, and I wish to God that I would have listened to my mom before Tanya did what she did to me. Because Tanya's behavior changed for the worse when we turned 11. Tanya was openly jealous of my success in school. Granted, she was incredibly smart herself, but she always made it a point to mock me for having great grades. I would always comment that since I wasn't pretty enough, having good grades would be a nice balance. Nice, right? It took me a while to build my self-esteem up after all the snide remarks that she would make about my weight, my face, and only now as a 22-year-old do I think that I'm beautiful and have a wonderful figure. Anyways, back to Tanya. As a result of her jealousy and growing resentment towards me, she began to plot my downfall. I make no exaggeration either. This girl literally tried to ruin my self-worth even more than she already had. It started in 6th grade. Tanya and I were remarkably close that year, and I wanted to do everything with her. We would talk all day in school, and we would chat all night on AIM. But on one particular evening, Tanya and I were talking about boys. Being that we were hormonal preteens, our conversations would usually turn on to who we liked in school that day. Being that I had a horrible relationship with my father, I didn't really trust boys, even from an early age, so it was rare if I developed a crush on one. And I remember Tanya and I's conversation going a little something like this. Tanya said, "Do you know Mark?" I answered, "The kid in my class? Yeah, why?" Tanya answered, "I heard he likes you." "What? No way," I answered. Tanya said, "Totally, he told me. You want me to talk to him and give him your username?" And I excitedly answered, "Yes, of course. Oh my God, thank you, Tanya." My heart was racing. A boy? Like me? Impossible. When Tanya told me that she would give Mark my username for AIM, I nearly exploded in my seat. 11-year-old me couldn't believe that I was going to have my first real boyfriend. How wrong I was. Fast forward to the next night. I was getting ready for bed when I heard the famous AOL ding sound off on my iPod Touch. You know the sound that I'm talking about. And when I checked the notification, it was a message from MarkyBoy99. I don't remember his username, so we'll just go with something like this. I turned red. Tanya had really talked to Mark and gave him my user. She was truly the best. He messaged me with the usual, "Hey," emphasis on the 3 Ys. And I responded, "Hey, I didn't want to come off as desperate, so I only used 1 Y." And not even 1 minute later, he messaged me back. We talked all night about everything, our days, how school was, what type of silly bands we liked, typical 11-year-old stuff. And I had to admit, I was smitten right off the bat. I think it was partly because I never really had a boy like me before, and the other part being that my self-esteem was so low that I never thought a boy would be capable of liking me. Also, it could have been because Mark was one of the most popular boys in school at that time. He played football, He was mouthy to the teachers and was extremely outgoing. All the things a young girl would be attracted to. We talked for months, my puppy love growing for him more and more every time we chatted. Of course, I never spoke to him on the phone, nor did I get his phone number, because why would I do that, right? All the while I was speaking to him, Tanya would be gassing me up, telling me how proud she was of me and that I deserved a boyfriend. My suspicions of Mark only began to grow when I attempted to approach him during school hours. Again, I had anxiety, so I would never really speak to Mark outside of AIM. But when I talked to him, Mark looked confused, as if he has never had a conversation with me before in his life. He turned away from me on the playground and walked to be with his other friends. Huh? Weird. This wasn't like him. He was usually so chatty with me online that I expected him to welcome me with open arms in person. My ego was bruised. My little 11-year-old mind tried to rationalize this behavior by chalking it up to him not wanting to talk to the nerd, since he was so popular and that he just preferred to keep our relationship online. I told Tanya the news and she seemed to be genuinely heartbroken for me. She was just as angry as I was and vowed to confront Mark later that day during music class. I was happy. Tanya had my back, and as far as I knew, she was going to tell Mark off about him being a total jerk to me. Well, it worked. Later that night, I got a message from Mark telling me how sorry he was for ignoring me and that he was just going through some family things. Oh, back in love I was. I didn't care that Mark ignored me during school. I didn't care that he rejected my advances in person. As long as I had him to talk to online and Tanya's support, I was fine. I even told my mom about him, and she was extremely happy for me as well. Another month passed and it was March 31st, 2011. Mark messaged me and told me that he had something very important to tell me the next day. The anxiety began. What was it? What did he have to tell me? At that point, I considered myself and Mark to be dating, so I was anxious that he was either going to break it off with me or that he was going to make us public in school the next day. I told my mom and Tanya, almost on the verge of tears with how excited and nervous I was. Well, the next day, April 1st, 2011 rolled around, and this is what followed. It was around 7 p.m. and I was on Club Penguin, as I usually was, until I heard a familiar ding. It was Mark. It was time for the news that I've been waiting for all day. Mark said, "Hey babe." I answered, "Oh my God, hey! I've been waiting for you to chat me all night." Mark answered, "Sorry babe, I was at practice. Are you ready for the news?" I was shaking with anticipation at this point. Even writing this now, a whole swell of emotions are resurfacing. I answered, "Yes, of course." It was then that Mark sent me a picture. I opened it, but only it wasn't Mark. It was Tanya, and she was holding a handwritten sign that said, "Happy April Fool's Day." At first, I started laughing, and I mean it was an ugly laugh. Of course it was a prank. Tanya had gotten me so good, right? Right? Well, wrong. It was then when the realization hit me that I started to sob. I felt betrayed and like a loser. Tanya had been behind Mark all along, and she had been planning this big joke since October of 2010. She had been so jealous that she pretended to be someone else and string along my emotions. when she knew that I was already in a rough place mentally. She told me that I was stupid to even think that Mark would even like me in the first place and that I was dumb for not asking for his number. Tanya had been at this for 6 months. An 11-year-old girl plotted Mark, used him to make me think a boy liked me, and tricked me into believing that I had a boyfriend, all the while telling me when we hung out that she was happy for me and that Mark and I were a cute couple. I told my mom, who then called her mom. My mother was livid, to say the least. She told Tanya's mom to tell her daughter to never speak to me again. I was crushed. My best friend of 3 years had catfished me because she simply wanted to play a joke. I was loyal to her and she toyed with my emotions because she could. Tanya had tried multiple times to guilt-trip me into being her friend again in the months that followed, leading into 7th grade. One of the more memorable and honestly messed up times being when she messaged me a few days after my birthday in August to tell me that her mother had just died in a horrible car crash, that her body was dismembered and they could only find her head and wedding ring. As anyone would be, I was in tears. Tanya's mother was nothing but lovely to me, and learning that she died in such a violent way crushed my soul. I started talking to Tanya again, asking her when her mother's funeral would be. Tanya then revealed to me seconds later, after speaking to her about the grisly details over her mother's passing, that she was kidding and was pranking me again and that I was stupid to believe her. She even sent a video of her laughing at me. I was disgusted. Who would even say something like that? What 12-year-old would message someone that their mother was dismembered in a car crash? She then revealed her ugly and, quite frankly, evil intentions when we were at the beginning of 7th grade and she became friends with a girl named Kaylee. They both invited me to sit with them at their lunch table, and because I was desperate for friends, I stupidly accepted, only to be met with hordes of insults and laughter behind my back every chance that I wasn't looking. Tanya then messaged me one night telling me to kill myself and that the world would be a much better place without me in it. She had Kaylee tell me to go jump off a bridge, and Tanya told me that she hated me and was never really my friend to begin with, and that I deserve all the pain she put me through the year prior. I again told my mom, who then called the police. She had had enough of Tanya, and so had I. For 4 years, I had put up with Tanya's malicious behavior, and I just couldn't handle it anymore. My mom made me delete my AIM account, and Tanya's mom told her to never contact me again or else. My mom also advised me to move lunch tables, but I was hell-bent on not letting Tanya win. For the entirety of 7th grade, I sat at the same table as Tanya, only I spoke to my friends at the other side of the table, and I never spoke to her, looked at her, or gave her any sort of attention. And Kaylee was scared to death of me afterwards too, as the police had gotten in contact with her family as well. It's been 10 years, and I still haven't spoken to Tanya. I'm now 22 years old, have 2 bachelor degrees, one in psychology and another one in history, and I am now working towards my master's in clinical social work. Tanya did other things to me that I could write a whole story about, but I think writing this one helped give me closure on the part of my childhood that scarred me for years. I thank God for my mom stepping up when she did, because I don't know where I'd be without her. As for Tanya, I don't know where she is or what she's doing, and I really rather not. On the off chance that she stumbles upon this story, I have a message for her. Your jealousy and wishes for death upon me did not win, and I truly hope that karma does not come around one day to bite you in the ass. Tanya, let's never meet again. The Secret Room Below the Basement of My Friend's House. Story by u/Jonah666. Okay, so basically, my friend lives in this fancy beach house, and it's usually always just the mom and my buddy who is always at the house, since his dad is always out on business for work, just traveling around to a lot of different places in the world. My buddy tells me that he's an international agent, or so his mom told him. One day, he told me that he was in the basement looking for something, and his shoe caught on the carpet's edge, like how it always happens, and he nearly fell headfirst into the wall. When he got back up, he told me that there was a trapdoor-style doorway going below the basement, and he had no idea until the carpet was kicked up violently and revealed it. The whole basement floor is concrete, just FYI, not dirt or anything like some are. He was freaked out, but super curious as to what lies beyond or below the trapdoor. So he opens it, and this is how he told me what he saw, and the following events that followed afterwards. He opened up the trapdoor that was concealed by a rug somewhat near the corner of the basement room. Upon opening it, he saw a ladder going downwards and a room lit up down at the bottom, so he climbs down carefully as he had no idea that this existed, and finds a freaking concrete walled room with just a double-seat couch, coffee table layout in front of the couch, and a pole lamp next to the couch. There was also a metal door off to his right in that room, but he said he got freaked out as hell and just climbed out and proceeded to shout for his mom in the house to tell her what the hell he just found. Now, this is where it gets really strange. His mom comes out to confront him, obviously since he was screaming in a panic and then shouting for her. And once she finds him, he told me that he started to tell her exactly what happened, like how he tripped over the basement carpet and saw the weird trap door and everything else that he saw. Now mind you, it was just him and his mom at home at that time. The dad was overseas on business work, and the mom started to get all wide-eyed and said, "We need to go right now, we have to go." In a state of sheer panic and confusion for both him and his mom, but he didn't understand what the hell was going on. They went to a hotel for a day and a half, and the whole time he kept asking his mom what the hell was going on and what was that trapdoor. And he told me that she literally was terrified of even saying anything about it except, "You shouldn't have ever seen that. This is a huge mistake." And repeating that sort of line in different ways while she was panicking herself. Somehow she figured it was safe to go back to the house and told him to just forget about it and never talked about it again, ever. He's a good friend of mine and wanted to share this because why the hell would you bottle up something so weird after that? Anyways, he said one day when his mom left for a quick grocery shopping, some few weeks later, he returned to the basement to find that the rug was completely gone and the trapdoor filled up with concrete. He could actually see the outline faintly where the doorway for entering below the basement was. Needless to say, he got more freaked out over that and told me that he thinks his dad is some kind of international hitman or something. He told me that he thought the table next to the double-seated couch was like a setup-style table, and the room to the right with a metal door, which he wished he wasn't too scared to open, might have contained all kinds of weapons or something. I don't know what the hell to think, what the purpose of the room below the basement was served for, but needless to say, it definitely gave me and him goosebumps talking about it, and let alone typing this whole story out.
The Creepy Coworker by hanjooni. This is my first time posting here, and this event happened in 2018. I worked at SeaTac Airport, which I still think is probably the smallest international airport I have ever seen. The airport was so small that your workstation almost forces you to work alongside other jobs. In this case, I worked in sales, and we were stationed next to the wheelchair lane, which usually had one wheelchair pusher in the lane. Now keep in mind, I was only 19 when this incident happened. I would say I'm a sweet person who goes out of my way to start conversations with people that look bored since I work night shifts at the airport. There was practically nobody flying, and there would be more workers than passengers. Therefore, we met Mike, around the age of 20 to 23. Mike was one of the wheelchair pushers who looked completely out of it, zoned out and didn't seem non-talkative. Me and Mike worked side by side in lanes. He usually come to give the person in the wheelchair lane a lunch break, and then proceed to go back to pushing people in wheelchairs throughout the airport. The 30 minutes we saw each other every day was completely awkward and quiet, until one day he overheard me and a coworker's conversation about depression. He prompted up in his chair and goes, "Yeah, I agree with your depression sucks." That's when I realized, oh man, the kid doesn't just look depressed, but he probably is. Now, I don't know how that small interaction changed our perspective on Mike. He would join our conversations and even went out of his way to say hello and give us a hug while he finds us throughout the airport. One day, my lead suggested me and Mike should go out for tacos since we both kept complaining how nothing was open late at night, and we were always hungry. Now, we've known Mike for almost a month now, and his depression-filled body started filling with joy every time we would find out we were stationed next to each other. At this rate, we were laughing it off, saying no way. It would be too weird if we went alone together. I was currently single and was no way attracted or interested in Mike like that. He then looked at me and said, "I actually know this amazing Mexican spot that's nearby if you are actually really hungry. They serve the best fish tacos." Now, knowing the fat ass I am, I didn't decline. I loved eating late at night, and Mike never gave me strange danger vibes. I agreed, because I don't see the harm in going out to get tacos before I sleep. We exchanged our numbers, and I head home before him since I clocked out an hour before he does. Now, when I arrived home, I was getting dressed to go eat out, and the plan was just to meet up at the spot since the Mexican spot ended up being only 5 minutes away from my house. I get a text from Mike saying he wanted to pick me up. I kept refusing because I just finally got my driver's license and the place was only 5 minutes away from my home. After almost 40 minutes of us insisting how we were going to get there, I finally gave in to have him pick me up, which I would later regret. Now, I was a big girl, like we're in the 200 zone, compared to Mike, who was very thin and short, so I wasn't worried if he attempted anything with me. I told him to pick me up along the street down because I didn't really want him to know where I exactly lived just yet. His beat-up trash Toyota pulled up, and we headed to the Mexican spot. We got our food, and it was amazing that we went for seconds. We have a good talk watching the soap opera on TV. After we're done, we get back into the car where he was supposed to drop me back at home, but he stops, looks at me and says, "Can we talk in private? I know a spot." I kindly refused and told him it's already 2 a.m. and we should get back home, and he says, I know it's late, but I just have a lot going on in my life, and you're the only person that really hung out with me like this. The kind of idiot I am, I said sure. Already seeing him drive down the road, I noticed so many red flags. As the streetlights started disappearing more, his mood and tone started to change. A complete difference in the atmosphere around Mike emerges. He starts telling me, I sure do hate the society about women nowadays. They all seem to have this stupid standard. I hate them. I hate them. And I'm like, did I just find a woman hater? Mike never seemed like a gay guy to me. He just started to seem every time he attempted to talk to women, they blatantly reject him. And me, a woman, is now a dummy he's projecting all his female hate talk to. I was actually too stunned to speak because he became a whole different person during that drive. We arrived at an abandoned skate park in the middle of God knows where. He tells me to get out. I listened. And here we are at 2 a.m. sitting on cold concrete in freezing temperatures. He goes on. He tells me how he hates women and how he would lie to his passengers he takes on his wheelchairs and tells them that he's from the UK and speaks in a British accent. I was so overwhelmed. Like, what the F was happening right now? He then talks to me in a British accent from there on. How he would give his life up for God, and God was the only thing keeping him chained down. He looked me dead in the eyes and says, God would want me to castrate myself since he doesn't want me touching or being near female creatures for my safety. I was completely quiet for the whole time, confused, questioning myself how much of a fool I was to even think that I thought this guy liked me. I was completely wrong. After 30 minutes, I was getting cold since this female creature I was anemic. I told him I would like to go home now, and he says, no, and proceeds to talk in a British accent about how God is coming to rescue him. I felt like I was living in a movie because I can't believe what was even happening. After he noticed I started shaking my leg, he then says, I guess we can proceed back to the car. We get back to his car and a miracle happens. My Asian mother calls me. I was expecting her to scream at me, asking me where I was and to come home like she usually does. But this time, she says in a calm voice, where are you? In Vietnamese. And I tell her I'm out getting food with a coworker, and she says, okay, have fun, and hangs up. Again, in disbelief that she didn't care where I was at almost 3 a.m., for the first time, I lie and say, what? Oh, you want me to come home? Oh, okay, I'll start heading home soon, and pretend to hang up the phone. I look at Mike and say sorry, my mom wants me home now. He punches his wheel and sighs annoyingly loud, which gave me a jump scare for a moment, and he just starts his car and just sits there in silence, annoyed, grinning the whole time. He eventually starts driving, pulling out his phone and literally throws it at me. Open it, he says, already exhausted and still not believing everything that was happening. My eyes grew fixated at over 100 notes on his phone. What is this? I asked. He said it's songs and poems he's wrote. He looks at me and says, go ahead, pick one. I don't quite remember what the notes said. The only key words I saw was betrayal and women that stood out. He goes, that one. Would you like for me to sing it to you? I straight up said no, but he continued to sing it for me, and the worst part is, he sang it in a British accent. The whole drive was him singing to me in a British accent how God's plan is to stray him from the human race so he can overcome himself. I was zoned out the whole car trip. It all didn't feel real. My sense of danger gained lower due to how exhausted I was, and how I was listening to how this man wanted to eradicate the female species off the face of the earth, and how our judgment day was coming. He dropped me off on my street, and had the audacity to say, "I had such a lovely time with you, darling." I slammed his door shut and ran down the street before he had a chance to start up his car. After the incident, I ignored his messages, which he texted me 2 pages long on how sorry and how he believed God was here to put us together. How my Asianness was the only thing holding him back to committing real love to me. I stood in the back of my station to avoid talking to him. He would follow me back into my break room, and thankfully, my manager was there and yelled at him to piss off before he called security. He later got the hint that I was not interested, but continued to stare down every second he was in the same station with me. Thankfully, during that time I found a second job and my whole schedule was changed, and I never had to see him at work again. I saw him at the Target once, but quickly went back to my car before he had a chance to walk up to me. I later found out Mike was living on one of my lesbian coworkers' couches. I told her everything he said and did, and she was completely shocked. She never saw Mike like that. He was just very quiet and would crack a joke here and there. I advised her she should keep an eye on him. She thanked me for the relay of all the information, and eventually he was forced to move out later in the month. So, Mike, darling, let's never ever meet again.
And here are the top comments for my last video. And here's the riddle for this video. Hello everyone, it's your creepy sister here. Thank you so much for watching the video. I really appreciate each and every one of you. But I would also like to thank my amazing patrons, my top tippers, and my dearest channel members. Thank you very, very much. I really appreciate it with all of my heart. If you want to support the channel further, you could also choose to become a patron, a tipper, or a channel member. But remember, it's appreciated, but never a requirement. I would also like to announce that we have merch now. The link is in the description of the video, along with all my other social media links, like my Discord server, Twitter, Instagram, and others. You can connect with me and send your stories there. And don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and comments are highly appreciated. And remember, your fear feeds me.